Hey everyone, welcome to another Big O event again. Uh, Wednesday evening and a great event we have for you guys here today. Hey guys, hi Julius, hi Jiaseng.
Hello,
Hello.
so
All
good to
right,
see you all.
okay, so let's go into the event itself. So before we actually get to the actual event, just to go into some introductions.
Yep. So I'll start off with the usual introduction to Google Developer Space. So we have a Google Developer Space is a physical space in the Google Singapore office. But due to COVID, we brought everything online. So that's how we started our YouTube channel. And I think most of you are either watching on Google Dev Space YouTube channel or Big O's channel. So a warm welcome to you here. And just a fun fact, the speaker for today, Bob, he is one of the main reasons why we actually have Google Developer Space. He was part of the team that conceptualized it, was there throughout the whole process of building it. So yeah, ask him anything you want about it later on. Really excited for today's session as well.
Right. And as always, social stuff for Big O, if you are looking forward to events that we host, and also looking for news on, what's the next event that we're going to be doing. We're going to have a few events over the next month or so. So do check out our different socials, for updates on what we do. We have our main website and our Facebook group where we update, all the events that we are going to be hosting. As well as on our YouTube channel, do subscribe to it. This is where we'll put all our content, including what we are doing today over here.
Yep, and similarly for developer space, we are on our website and also on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We regularly host events with developer and startup communities from Southeast Asia region. So do subscribe to keep updated with all that's happening.
All right, and we also like to introduce some of our upcoming speakers. You might have seen Nandini already, which is someone we have introduced a couple of talks ago. Nandini is from Facebook. She has about 20 years of experience in the industry. And one thing that's super interesting about her journey is that she went from being a software engineer, moving to a director, and now a senior leader in Facebook. And over the course of her journey as well, it's very similar to our previous guests, people like Christian McCarrick, people like Bruce Wang, who also talk about their career journey. And this is a very good opportunity to actually listen to Nandini share her side of the experience, also moving up the corporate ladder, I guess, and also developing her career over a period of many years. So please do look forward to that. It's in 2 weeks' time. And hopefully, we see all of you again at that time. Next, we have Bei. Don't let the name fool you. She actually has more than 20 years of experience also. But one thing that's very different from Bei is that she chose to stay as an individual contributor. She was from Motorola for more than 10 years and eventually moved to Voodoo. And now she's at Netflix developing TV apps on Facebook. How should I say? Facebook products on TV, such as Android TV, LG, Samsung, so on and so forth. So now it's also a very good opportunity to hear from someone who doesn't want to manage people, but on the other hand wants to stay technical. And I think this is a good opportunity also to hear from that side of the story. Yeah, cool. Okay, I suppose I should introduce the great one. So once upon a time, there's no Google Developer Space. And now there is, but there's nobody there. I hope there's somebody there right now. But there used to be people there. And it's a place that we actually gather and have a lot of events, Google events, things like data science, SG, and so forth. But I think I don't want to hug the limelight. I think it's great if we can have Bok himself, the man himself, to actually introduce developer space for us.
Hey folks, hey Julius, hi Wei hi Justin.
Hi, Bob.
Thanks for having me, and Julius, your introduction really, man, just cracks me up. Yeah, just a quick introduction of myself. I've been with the company for I think 9.5 years now, slightly more, I think. Yeah, I had the privilege to be working in the developer relations team. And also, working with developers and startups from across the region through programs. I have a background in software engineering, And like what Wayne has mentioned, we are a bunch of folks who are looking after developer space. Unfortunately, it's closed right now, but once it's open, do feel free to drop by. Happy to host you folks, and we could catch up over coffee. Just have a casual chat and catch up. Apart from that, I also look after programs for startups across Southeast Asia, South Asia, China, as well as Taiwan. Cool. And we are here to talk about working overseas, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, that's a very impressive introduction. I think to start off the entire event today, similar to, I think for those who are joining us last month, we actually did this experiment. This question that we asked at the start of the entire event, sort of to liven things up. So we're going to be doing something similar to that today, to start off this entire session. So I'm gonna bring this question to the screen, and do feel free to participate, like in the comments. You can also scan that QR code, go to Slido, put in that code, and put in your opinion there. But this is my question, to the my other host over here. Which one would you rather have, of this two different superpowers? Would you rather have the power to stop time, or would you rather have the power to time travel to the past?
Wait, do you want to go first? Yeah, wait.
Oh, you got one for travel to the past. Any of you want to go first? Like I could go with mine, but I think it's a little bit deep. Like I had a very long time to think about this.
Well, now I'm really interested to know what you choose, man.
Okay, I can probably go first. So right now, as you can see, I'm probably the one with the least equipment here, because I probably don't have the money that they all have. So I think that if I can go back to the early 2010s, I should probably dump my entire life savings on Bitcoin. And I could, I would probably have a pool of coins right now, and I'm just swimming on coins. Oh well, too bad for me, I guess, and too good for everyone who has become a Bitcoin millionaire at this point.
Yeah,
How about just again, Paul?
I would travel to the past, just because I don't want to be in this COVID era, not being able to travel. So I'm very curious, for those of you who voted for stop time, what would you want to do with stopping time? Yeah, let us know in the comments. What about Bok and Wei Yan?
So I could go first. I think I'll go for travel to the past. Pretty much, having the chance to kind of revisit some of the mistakes I've done in life, and then, hopefully able to meet myself in the past and then pass a bit of advice. It might create a time paradox though. So, but then just having that opportunity to undo a few things, relearn a few lessons, I think that'll be pretty interesting to see how the future would then pan out. So travel to the past, definitely.
So I think we can see also some very interesting comments. We have Toru from talking from Facebook. Yeah, so being able to travel to the past to be able to, like, in hindsight, to do something that you wouldn't have perhaps done, like, or you would have done like a few years later. Okay. Maybe I can. Okay, so I'll share my answer. So mine is actually the smaller one over there, which is to pause time. I had a really, really long time to think about this. I mean, okay, because I'm the guy that selected this question as well. So my explanation is this. Okay, in a way, traveling to the past, it's a superset of the power of stopping time. Because technically speaking, if I can travel to the past, I could just travel to the past like 1 second ago, like an infinite amount of times. So that's essentially pausing time. But I feel that, like, after thinking about it, I feel that pausing time probably would be the one that would make my life more fruitful. Because if I'm able to pause time, the only benefit I'll get is being able to have the time to prepare. For example, if I have a huge test coming up, I didn't have enough time to study for it. I'm gonna pause time and like have all the time in the world to prepare myself for that. Of course, traveling to the past, you can replay that same opportunity. But I think what you lose by having by traveling through time, right, again and again, right, is that's the sense of being able to go through like this first experience, being able to succeed. Like it loses the meaning there. There's a term for this in like video games, right? It's called safe scumming. I'm not sure like how many of you know the term itself. I think it's probably more widely used, I think, in the XCOM games. Again, if anyone knows about it, but the idea is basically like the game itself. You always have a percentage chance of being able to successfully do something. So, but there is a flaw there where you can save the game and then you can just reload from the save point and keep redoing the same action again and again. So essentially, it becomes 100%. But it brings away the fun of like the challenge of going through the whole thing. Yeah. So that's my answer. I feel like maybe it's also not the perfect one. Like if you let me choose, like if a witch appears in front of me and gives me the choice, maybe I would choose time travel. But I feel like the stop time has a more romantic feel to it. I don't know.
Well, you definitely left an impression. The percentage is increasing.
Oh yeah. But I can say I guess a lot more people would prefer to travel to the past. I can understand that as well. Yeah, being able to travel to the past, like be it mistakes you make or buy Bitcoin. I think. There's a very interesting sentiment in the audience. Maybe wait, what? For anyone who's watching what's that, Loki? I think you'll be able to know this. TVA. Okay, so anything else you guys want to add on this question? Actually, how about okay, this one might sound weird, but what if we put a third one over here, which is to I feel like this might not be a very valid option, but traveling forward in time. But that's essentially just us doing nothing. Okay, traveling forward in time, but without aging. So like, of course, we are in the now. If we're just waiting, we'll age together with like time moving forward. But what if we can travel ahead in time?
Do the people around you age?
Yes, the people around you will age. You're the only one that will not age.
No.
I think it would be fun.
Yeah, I don't think I will. Oh, sorry, Julius. Yeah.
I was going to say it would be fun to travel to the future also and see if the Bitcoin price is still going up. Then I can buy now. Not bad, right? I can change my life and hopefully the audience also and everyone else. We're still into depression. Oh my god, Clarence. Oh dear.
I think traveling to the future.
Sorry.
Oh, I just say that traveling to the future is kind of scary. It also kind of like takes away the anticipation of, or takes away the possibility of things that could have happened, right? If you already know that in advance. So I'm not sure about traveling to the future. Maybe going back to the future.
Back to the future.
No, just a pun on the movies. You can ignore my comment.
Okay, so shall we move on to the actual questions? So, okay, before jumping into, I think for the four of us, of course, we'll be discussing a few prepared questions as well as questions that we received in. But before that, I think we'll start off with a question that we also want to ask, I think, for the audience who's here today, in terms of your opinion of working overseas. And we want to understand, like, what's your considerations when you are thinking about working overseas. So I think, of course, across the entire the entire session of what we're going to be doing over here, we'll just leave this on so you can just go in, type in the whatever concerns that you have. Yeah. Okay, and you can see money. Okay, so While we are waiting for, or rather, what you guys are putting in your answers, I think guess we can start on some of our topics. So, perhaps to sort of give the audience some context first, let's go around the room to reintroduce ourselves again. But I think this time around, it would be good if you can indicate, the context of where you have been to, was that and how long you have been working, in different places. Okay, so maybe I'll take away this temporary, and I think maybe you can. Oh yeah, the Slido is already in the comments. So I'm gonna arrow someone to start first. Maybe I'll arrow myself. Then I'll arrow the next person. Okay. So hi, I'm Wei Yuan, and I only work in Singapore. All right, I'll arrow the next one now. That was really fast. Julius, go
Oh,
for it.
hello. Hi, I'm Julius. I guess most of you probably who has been following us knows this face. Um, I work in four countries actually. I'm not originally from Singapore. I'm a Filipino. Uh, and then I worked there for about 4 years. And then eventually kind of moved to Singapore. And has been working here since. And in between also, I had a chance to work in the US for a while. So I have, I guess, yeah, a little bit of kind of experience with various cultures, various working styles. Um, yeah, that said, point to Marina Bay Sands. Okay, Gardens.
Yeah, very representative of all the countries I have worked in, which is Singapore. Yeah, uh, I'll hand over to Bok, the main person for today.
Oh man, that's a lot of pressure. I had a chance to work at Portsmouth, which is in the UK. I was there for 6 months, and we were trying to deploy Tesco's first mobile sales kiosk. At that time, I think the mobile phone devices, the sales are picking up, and then Tesco was trying to find a way to streamline the checkout process. So our company won a project, and then we went there, and then it was quite fun. We set up the kiosk, we set up the machine, we developed the motherboard, we programmed the OS. It was a pretty interesting experience. My first time in the UK, my first time in a country which is very cold. So that's the first place I worked outside of Singapore. And then when I joined Google, I had a chance to move to Australia. So I was in Sydney for roughly around 2.5 years with Google. Amazing place, the culture, the pace of life, as well as the things that you can literally do there. Sydney has a lot to offer. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I was working very closely with the US team. So it's a very funny story because I went over to the US to do like a knowledge transfer kind of exercise. Right, so I was there for a week. I was supposed to be there for a week, and then the manager at the time was saying that, hey, we're actually trying to start a new team. What do you think? I was like, what do you mean by what do you think? So I then proceed on with trying out for a role in that team. Gotten the job, and then the next thing I had to do was to come back to Sydney to inform my manager that, hey, thanks for sending me to the US. By the way, I'm going to be leaving Sydney soon. Not the best time to actually communicate the news, but it went well. My manager at that was very supportive. So I moved over to San Francisco, and I was working with top advertisers at that point of time. So like eBay, so Netflix, so on and so forth. It was pretty interesting because the pace, the culture, the business practice was very different. My first time in the States, and then after that, I have an opportunity to join the Google Play Music team. So I was traveling back and forth between US, Japan, and Korea. We were trying to launch Play in Korea, and it was really fun because we get invites to like concerts, very fan meetups with the label artists, things like that. It was quite fun. But then after a while, we decided, me and my wife, we decided like it's time to come back home. So we moved back to Singapore. So that's 6 years ago, and that's when I joined DevRel. So I've been back in Singapore for 6+ years, coming 7, and just so happy to be back home.
Wow, that's a really really long list of different countries that you have been to. Even if it's a short period to long periods,
Uh,
that's really impressive. We
uh,
are we, go ahead, sorry.
oh no, I was just saying that looking back, I think it's not something that I planned consciously. I was very young then. I think that kind of comes back to the next reason, the next question we have planned. I was very young, and I just take on when opportunity comes on. So yeah, but just glad it actually worked out.
So I think that's a really good, like I think you mentioned about next question. So we'll transit to the next question.
Uh-huh.
So this question, I guess it would be more focusing on Julius as well as for Bok. What are your reasons for choosing to work overseas?
Julius, you want to go first? Yeah.
Me? Okay, I guess I did mention that I'm a Filipino, right? And I'm in Singapore. So probably the reason is actually the top three reasons. I'd say money, uh, money, and more money. There's a funny story whereby I came here into 2010. And before I came here, there's this special thing called the iPad. Not sure if anyone has heard about it. It came out, and I was like, okay, I have two. I like reading books, and I had two options. I was like, am I going to buy this thing, or am I going to buy an entire bookshelf and throw my books to the bookshelf and kind of not have my books every time I need them? Because I like to like highlight the books and so forth. And then I was like, oh man, like bookshelves, books, iPad, and then I was like, yeah, let me buy an iPad. And I had to essentially not eat or drink or pay anything for 2 months because that's the amount of money I have to save up to buy an iPad. That's my Philippine salary. I used to earn probably when I first entered the workforce, right? That was about 2006. My salary was about $400. $400 is a food budget in Singapore, by the way, for a month. So life was pretty tough. So I thought that like I'm probably not going to survive there for long. And I tried to apply for jobs here, and of course, like the first thing that you run into is rejection, and more rejection, and more rejection, and comes with that is depression. Clarence, if I could like fast forward those times, I probably wouldn't have felt the rejection and just jump right into Singapore. But yeah, that's reality. So I thought that I could save up more money here. So I move.
Do I go next?
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Top 3 reasons. I think one main thing was the opportunity to get exposed to different working culture or different, a different life, right? So that was very exciting. I don't have commitments at that point of time that I need to worry about. So it's pretty more of that's embracing that sense of the spirit of adventure, right? So just going out and trying new things. So I would say that's one big reason. And the other part is also the career development aspect of things, right? Trying to see if there's an opportunity to acquire new skills, or to get exposed to different opportunities, or even kind of get exposed to different personalities. You hone in a little bit of your perspectives, through that way. So the second one. The third one, practically speaking, you got to look at from the financial side of things, right? You kind of want to also make sure that, from a salary standpoint, it kind of helps you to grow, your packet. So those are the three main things. Although I would say that the money part is interesting, and I think we elaborate a little bit more when we get to the next question, because I actually learned my lesson the hard way. Which is a very interesting story to tell. But if you ask me what the three reasons are, just to sum it up, it's definitely the opportunity to live a different life, get exposed to different cultures, able to develop my career, as well as from a financial standpoint, able to grow my wealth.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that both of you mentioned about the financial opportunities. Okay, from as a coming from a someone who has not tried working overseas before, I just want to ask from the standpoint of like whenever you're moving between two different countries, like how do you factor in like how much would it cost in terms of this one single move?
Oh, Julius, you want to take this one?
I can tell you. Actually, I can tell you two stories. Doesn't work. Okay, maybe I tell one. Then maybe later, if we have time, I'll tell the other. When I came to Singapore, my savings was about 3,000 Sing dollar, which is like, I guess, for people who are not from Singapore and needs to convert, it's probably about 2,300 USD, more or less. And then you can convert to your own. Yeah. So that was like the money in the bank, and I brought everything here. And then I was like, all right, I have this amount of money, and I need to pay rent, right? And then in Singapore, and as with most other countries, you pay the rent first, right? And I pay like 1 month deposit and 1 month for the actual thing. So like I lost about 40% of my savings out of my first day in Singapore. And then I was like, okay, I have remaining about 1,800, 1,700 to survive. So at that time, the rent was about 600, I think it was. So what I did was, I was like, okay, I can probably survive with the Cai fan, or like the mixed veggie rice, which at that time cost around $2. Now I think it's more, right? At the time it cost about $2. So like every day my food budget is about $5, which is like two Cai fan, and then in the morning probably a piece of bread and milk. And it kept me alive until I get my first salary. And then I was like, oh my God, I can leave. So otherwise I probably eat grass by then. But it was not easy also that, because like I have to be very strict with my budget. And I had a friend who's like, hey, we're going to have a dinner in this really nice place, about $10 per meal. And then I was like, sorry, man, cannot. But now can already. But yeah, it was good. It was tough for the first few months. Yeah.
Vin has a comment. He says, that sounds terrifying, Julius. Glad it turned out to be a great investment.
Thank you.
You know what the saying goes, right? You will never go wrong when you invest in yourself. So I think you're doing the right thing from the very start. So congratulations to you. For me, I'm very sorry. What was the question again?
So how do you get past okay, maybe let me rephrase the question to maybe more relational for like for people like me who are slightly more on the fearful side of, let's say, things, considerations before moving overseas. So like how do you factor in the cost in terms of when you're moving overseas? So yeah, I guess like Julius, he probably covered a big part about the living cost going into a country. But I think, as I was thinking about it, I was also thinking about like other things, like let's say I have to move all my furniture over. Okay, yeah, and so renting of your house and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can share a few things. So there are a couple of things you want to look at. Like first of all, you want to look at what's the living costs in the destination, right, in the place that you want to move to. And that could mean a few things. That could mean, like, if you're renting a place, how much is the rental cost going to be like? That's also going to be like traveling, traveling costs. And then after that, there's going to be like utilities, right? Basically, how much it costs per month to settle your basic needs. Then there's always food, and then leisure costs, like how much you're going to spend, socializing with your friends, going out, have a good time. So all those things are things that you want to look at. I think one big learning that I had was taxation. Right, you got to really understand the taxation system of the place that you're going to. And I'll give you an example of the mistake that I made. Going from Singapore to Sydney was straightforward because the taxation was much easier to understand, right? Even though it's higher, but it's pretty straightforward. Going from Sydney, Australia to the US, and that's where I got beaten quite badly. Was I wasn't aware that there's multiple layers of taxation, right? There's the state tax, and then there's the federal tax, and some cities there's even the city tax. So I wasn't aware of all those things. I was just very excited with the opportunity, and that lead to poor negotiation on compensation. Right, because I wasn't factoring all these things, right? So I was thinking, oh, okay, the currency exchange rate kind of worked in my favor, so that's awesome. So let's go. And then I arrived, and then I realized that even apart from the taxes, even the salary payout is also different, right? In the US, it's bi-weekly. So all of a sudden, I need to kind of manage my cash flow differently. Right, whereas in Sydney, in this part of the world, it's pretty monthly. You get a salary monthly, and then you pay tax at the end of the year. So that's usually how it is, right? But in the US, it's like it'll be deducted from your pay when you're being issued your salary. Then you get back. You get back the you get it back at the end of the year. So that part, I think, is something that if anyone is looking to relocate, you kind of really need to think about that. I think the third big thing is health. Healthcare. And it didn't dawn upon me until I got involved in an accident. So when I was in San Francisco, I took up cycling. It's just there's a big cycling culture over there, and I got sucked into it, and I was, doing rides every weekend, and San Fran is a place where there's a lot of mountains, right? So climbing up a mountain is very satisfying when you get to the top, and then able to descend the mountain without at a relatively fast speed. It's just that thrill, right? So there was one point of time where I was alone. I was doing a solo trip from San Francisco to San Bruno. It's roughly around. It took me 3 days to do that. And I was during the descent. I got into an accident, right? So and I remember fracturing a few of my ribs, and I had a bit of a concussion. So, but I didn't I didn't realize that the health system in the US works a bit differently, right? So that increased my awareness that we really need to factor in, budget for healthcare, because the insurance structure works differently. You want to make sure that you're well covered, so and so forth. So I would say, definitely health is something to kind of factor into your costing or your planning when you relocate, right? Then the other things, you just go there and you figure it out along the way. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, just a small follow-up. Like, is there a way to I'll ask the question properly. Is there a way to, like, how should I put it? Like, let's say, sometimes when you move overseas, if there's a friend over there to help you, that's the best case scenario. But usually is there like an occupation where people help with foreigners who are settling in terms of settling things like taxes and health insurance? Is that the thing?
I mean, from a company perspective, yes, there's relocation support. So generally, you get some form of support, like either you get relocation budget that helps with moving some of your stuff to a new country. Oh, by the way, sometimes it's not worth moving your stuff to your new place, because you got to think about how you're going to move it back if you're so attached to that item, right? So there's definitely support from the company side, and I think some companies practice this. I'm not entirely sure if externally there's such services, but I remember when I was studying in Melbourne, so I did my degree in Melbourne. There are agencies that help with relocation, consultants mainly. So you could hire their services and then it help you figure it out. I think it might be worth going down that route if you are relocating as a family. I think if you're alone, you more or less don't really need that kind of service to that extent, right? It's easy to kind of coordinate things and plan things when you are moving yourself. But I guess with family, that's a different story altogether, because if you have kids, you got to think about where to actually place them. What is education, what the schooling actually looks like, right? You got to look for a school, you got to place them in school, and then that kind of affects your decision in terms of where you want to live, right? So there's a lot of interdependencies when you think about planning, especially when you're moving as a family. But I do believe that there's consultants or there's agencies that help with relocation. Yeah, I mean, friends definitely. Like, you go, if you have friends there, I think that's the best way. I think the good thing about friends is that you could actually, and some of my friends actually do this, that they go there and they kind of live with their friends for a few months. They should try it out, right? So you have that opportunity to try before you buy kind of concept. Right, so you try it out, you figure out if you really like it. You also take the time to kind of tap into your friends' network and try to figure out and create a support structure when you're there, right? So I think if you're friends, I think that's definitely the advantage that you'll be having.
Okay, so I think in the last portion of answer, you mentioned some portions on if you're moving with a family. So I'm going to use that to segue to the next question. So the opposite. So reasons for not choosing to work overseas. And maybe I can start off with this, since as someone who hasn't worked overseas. But of course, I think everyone over here is free to answer this. Yeah, I think for myself, the reasons why I would not choose to work overseas, I think the primary reason I would give, it's actually mostly marriage. Like, even as a young person, I think after getting married, now you need to take into account your spouse. If you have kids, you have to take account, I think, what Bok mentioned as well. If you have to relocate, you need to find amenities like schools and all that. I think in my case, if I have to relocate with my wife, I also need to make sure that she's okay with relocating and finding, like, let's say, if she's need to see if she's able to find an equivalent job. Yeah, so that's one of my big concerns. Second big concern is money, actually, as well. In this case, the money comes in terms of loan. So as a Singaporean, I think all of us would be, I think for the Singaporeans who are watching, a lot of you would be very familiar with this thing called HDB. It's a very big debt. So, you want to, like, since you are paying off it, you must as well live in it and finish paying off it first. Yeah, I think those are, like, some of the reasons I would give, but I'm curious to hear, like, what you guys think.
I think, why don't you share some word of wisdom?
I don't think from my point of view, it's not really like choosing not to work overseas. I think it's more of like the right opportunity hasn't arrived yet. Yeah, so yeah, I think so far the past few jobs that I've had, it's more of like going for business trips. So it's just a couple of days, but there was no opportunity that came across, yeah, for like relocating. Yeah, but Bok, if any opportunity comes across, I'm up for it. So just letting you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah. Yeah. Bob, you can go ahead and share your top 3 reasons.
Top 3 reasons. Yeah, definitely family commitment is one big reason. It also depends on which stage of life you're in, right? Like, if you are pursuing your education, and then I guess and you're pursuing that in Singapore or in your home country, that's one of the reasons you might not want to give it up halfway through and then move on to another place. Uh, if you basically are settled down with a family, I think there's a lot more to consider. I wouldn't say not to work overseas, but rather it's harder to do so as you get on with life. There's also this concept of like how marketable you are in that particular place, right? So for example, like I was just thinking to myself, like China, right? It's a very exciting place. The economy is booming, so on and so forth. And sometimes I do have dialogues with myself and saying that would it make sense? Why don't we just go over there and let's try things out, right? But then you come again and then you got to look at from a practical standpoint, like whether your skill sets uh, does it offer any value to the economy of that place, right? Like, I wouldn't say that my Chinese is perfect, and basically I wouldn't say that I've acquired the right amount of experience to be able to assimilate myself immediately to and add value to the economy or to the role that I'm trying to get into. So I think that is a consideration, and the other part is in terms of career development. Like if everything is working well for you in your current job, and you feel secure, and given that the pandemic situation is still happening, you might want to really consider whether it's worth the risk. So there's always this appetite of risk, right? Like how much risk you want to take on. So those are a few things. Um, every time when you moved, right, you'll be confronted with a question like, do I stay on in that country, or am I here for a few years, and then I move back? Right. So I think it's worth thinking about that. And if after going through that mental exercise, you realize that I'm just going to stay on for 1 or 2 years, then is it really worth you know, doing that, going through the big hassle of uprooting yourself and then moving to a new company, moving to a new country, settling down, and then return back after a few years. So I think those are the few things that we have to really consider. So I wouldn't say it's not to work overseas. I think it's pretty much like it's harder to work overseas once you have so much things to consider. Yeah.
Julius, you want to add any?
Okay, I was hoping to not add more because, like, I think Bok's answer is so detailed. Maybe I can share two stories if that helps. So the first one was uh, I did briefly mention earlier today that I work in the US, right? And the story goes like this. And I was actually too young to actually think about life back then. And so the story was like I was in the US and having a great time. I was working in the airlines, coming up with some really interesting products. And then um, my mother called, and then I was like, I think US is great. The people are great. The work is great. Everything is great. I want to stay here. And she was like, and then she was like, "Oh, you're not going to go back home for your birthday?" And then I'm like, I'm being emotionally blackmailed. And so I packed my bags and go home. And then, then I regretted it. Um, so that was one story. I guess like emotional blackmail was really sad. Okay, I hope my mom wasn't watching. Um, and then the next story, which I think is probably a better one, probably something that people can learn from, is that actually it's someone that I think most of us know, at least the three of us or four of us. You probably know Alex Chan, right? The former head of product at Viki, and also from other major tech company also where he used to work at and where he is now. Um, his was quite interesting because family also is a main consideration for him to move. So his family is in the U.S. And then when he came here, his entire family moved. And one thing that I find extremely important when we move, especially people in the executive level, but also in general everyone, is that in the salary negotiation phase, it's extremely important for both parties to feel that they could trust the other, and no one is trying to strong arm the other. What I find in many companies in certain places is that they try to lowball people who are looking for jobs. And it might work in the short run that we feel that, oh, we got a good deal. We feel that we got a good deal. And what we fail to realize is that as the person is actually rendering his or her service in the company, uh, the financial aspect will always be part of his consideration, his or her consideration. And so, had Rakuten Wiki lowballed Alex to such an extent that it limited his capacity to render his service, um, I would say that the company would have been in a very different place. So I think that they did a good job, and they were able to negotiate a good arrangement for for him. And I think towards the end, I think he was one of those people that I think really made a difference in the company. And I think if Alex is watching, I would like to give a shout out to him for doing such a good job. And I'm really one of those who benefited among many others of his great work.
Okay, so wait, I think I heard someone. I'm not sure if someone else want to add something. Uh, okay, if not, I'm going to move to the next question. Right. So I think perhaps more directed towards both Bob and Julius. If what changes have you experienced after working overseas?
Can,
Hmm.
can I just
Oh,
say,
Julius is laughing there.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's this guy named Kyle in the chat. I know your wife. I'm going to send this recording to your wife. I love you. Anyway, maybe I just go first since I I need to comment on Kyle. um, um, I think one of the things that I learned kind of moving overseas is the wealth of culture that comes across, that I have to deal with, which is quite transparent to me. I always see the world from a Filipino mindset. And coming here, right, certain Filipino cultures actually don't work in Singapore. And also because Singapore is a melting pot of various cultures, and then we have to learn to kind of adjust to various means by which people express themselves. Here are probably two of the things that I run into, which I think people might find weird, but it's just the nature of things. One is that I had an opportunity to have some really great conversations with people from Russia. And in Singapore, if you don't smile, they'll think that you're grumpy and they probably don't want to work with you. In Russia, if you smile, they'll be like, this guy's suspicious. So in Russia, you don't smile. You just like, and I asked my Russian friends, like, if people smile, like, do you trust them? Then they're like, no. So even if they actually move to places like the US, whereby people tend to smile more, the cultural aspect that they have kind of grown up with, they still carry with them. And so so now if you have to work with various cultures, then you also have to sort of like kind of adjust how you work with them so that you can build trust as well and not communicate things that could have been interpreted in different forms. Also, another thing that I run into is that also culture, which is something that we usually run into, right? Cultural differences. In countries like Vietnam, China, Singapore, we tend to use a lot of diminishers. instead of like saying we should do this, in Singapore we're like, oh, maybe we can do this, you know, like in China we do the same thing, right? Thais, the Vietnamese, they would do this. And then you have cultures that uses a lot of how should I say, strengtheners. You have places like the US, for example, or like in India, for example, where you're like, oh, we should absolutely do this, you know, like we should definitely do this. Then like, but it means the same, you know. But because the culture has a lot of these nuances, certain things might be misconstrued because of the cultural milieu that we kind of navigated around when we were, you know, younger and so forth. So it's something that I thought was quite interesting to learn from. I rub people the wrong way in many different ways, and I wish, I guess, turning back time, I probably would have wanted to do it differently. But I think that was one of the major learnings I ran into.
Yeah, I have to agree with Julius. I think once you're part of that community, I think the culture kind of, um, will be the first thing that you notice and the biggest change that you also experience. I think along with culture is also communication styles, right? And one of things that I've consistently noticed, after moving a few countries, is that the words have different meaning. People use different words. People use different. There's also the vocabulary is different. The rhythm of speech, the tonality, all these are different as you move from one country to the other. So I think the biggest change I've experienced, apart from the culture aspect of it, was communication. The other thing I started to realize, and this is more of a change that developed within myself, is that it's this internal struggle. Like, do you assimilate yourself to? Do you want to assimilate yourself in that particular culture, in that country, or you hold back to your roots? I remember at a certain point of time when I was in the US, there's this identity crisis that I go through, right? Uh, and I forget to mention I'm originally from Malaysia, by the way. So then it means like, okay, do I need to be worried that I'm starting to lose my identity, as I stay on and start assimilating into the culture, into the US culture. And there was a period of time I remember that I started to really enjoy hanging out with Asian Americans. My roommate in Sydney was an Asian American, and a few good friends that I had in the States was also Asian American, and it's just I find myself started to gravitate towards that, because I think subconsciously I was trying to hold on to my roots and my traditions. Whereas at the other flip side of the coin is that, yeah, do I need to worry if I hold on too much to my identity? I'll not be able to, uh, you know, uh, get involved in the Western society as much. So I think the biggest change was going through that internal struggle. At the end of the day, I come back. I come to the resolve that I really want to hold on to my Asian identity. And for people who work very closely with me, like Justin, that even in a professional setting, the way I speak, the way my mannerisms are very, very Asian in that aspect. But this is just me sharing. But it's a very interesting journey, to be honest, because if I didn't go to work overseas, I don't think I would have this struggle as much. So just want to share that. If anyone is going through that, experiencing that, feel free to leave a comment. I think that's a very interesting dialogue to get into. But yeah, I think for me internally, that was the biggest change I've experienced.
Well, that was really interesting. Like it's very interesting to see that how working overseas has given both of you guys the opportunity to grow, and I think in the case of Bok, being able to understand, I guess, deeper about yourself.
Yeah, I think it was really that discovery process. As you start reflecting, that was really interesting. But one can easily get lost in it. So I won't say, if you're going through that, don't kind of like dive too deep into it, and don't stay in that space for too long. But I would say that was a very interesting experience personally for me.
Moving on to a more light-hearted note, since you're talking about hometown, right? So Eric asked the question, do you miss the food from your hometown? Bok and Julius, what do you have to say?
Miss the food from my hometown.
Okay, I go first. I
Oh,
go
yeah,
first.
yeah, okay, Julius.
I mean, this is where I need to process a bit. Like, do I
Where
call
is your
Malaysia my
hometown?
home? Or 'cause- yeah.
Oh, if you guys want, maybe you can pick a particular food that you miss.
Okay, I'll go first. So, um, I was born in PJ, but I spent a majority of my early years as a toddler in a place up north in Malaysia called Teluk Intan. It's a fishing village. It started off as a fishing village. If anyone is dialing in from there, a shout out to you. We have a leaning tower in the middle of the city, which became a landmark, and you can search for photos of it. There is a particular delicacy from that place, which is the chi fan. But it's not your typical chi fan where you have sauce. It comes with the sauces and things like that. It's dry throughout. I think in most there's the mayu or the sesame oil sprinkled on it, and it has this. I'm not to today. I'm not exactly sure what that ingredients is, but it gives that salty flavor. That kick to it. I'm not sure if it's a vegetable or it's a fruit. But pretty much, to this point, I don't think I've found the same chicken fine anywhere else. The places that I've worked with and lived in. So that would be the place. That would be the food that I miss the most from Telinton.
We do have a comment from the audience talking about it as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's the best, man. I tell you.
How about Julius?
Me, actually, I don't.
That's good. That means Singapore food is.
Oh, so in the Philippines, it's quite interesting in a few ways. So in many parts of Southeast Asia, right, you have a good mix of vegetables and meat. In the Philippines, if you get a chance to get rid of vegetables, you should actually get rid of them, which is probably 90% of Filipinos what we do. So most of us have weight problems. Our bellies, when the leaf closes, it can be the one that kind of keeps the leaf from closing. We have big bellies in the Philippines. That's just how it is. Not very healthy at all. So. So when I came to Singapore and I had friends who's like, oh, I want to have a good balance of vegetables and meat. I was like, oh, what? There's such thing? Not so. Then I realized, wow, we are not as healthy as I wanted to be. And then another thing which I thought was quite interesting is that I came to Singapore. And then I went to McDonald's, and then I went to buy a $5 meal, the Max Spicy fries and Coke, right? And then as I was eating it, I was like, oh my god, I couldn't even eat the fries because I'm so full with the burger and the drinks. Because in the Philippines, when you purchase a medium meal, right, it's about half the size of the medium meal in Singapore. And at the time, because how shall I say, like my tolerance for food is really small. Like I eat very small. And then in Singapore, I guess I kind of grew horizontally in a sense. Became more fat. So yeah, that's a good also. But yeah, anyway, food is good here.
I think we're running a bit low on time, so I'm gonna jump ahead to some of our later questions that are also a bit more on the interesting side. I'm very curious. Oh, I'm very curious to ask about this one. I think again, this one more towards both Bok and Julius. I think perhaps more relational to our viewers who might have fears about or considerations they're thinking about in terms of when they are working overseas. So is there anything that can help us dispel?
About traveling and working overseas. What myths?
Okay, this is very philosophical. Maybe I go first, which means that box answer will be so much more refined. um, so maybe I go first. I think one thing that happened to me, and I think it will happen to many others also, is the thought that once you hit something, thinking that you have arrived, and once you have arrived, then you start wanting more. What I found was that when I first came to Singapore, right, I was like, wow, my salary increased threefold. And then I was like, wow, like in the Philippines, it will take me forever to get here. And then I was like, you know, and then after a year, I quit my job because there's a higher paying place. Not good, not good. my employer is probably angry with me to this day. But then I realized that there's this innate tendency of human beings to want to have more once they have it already, and then they will want to have more, they will want to have more. It's an endless satiation of something that we perceive as better. And likewise, it occurs in many other contexts as well. Like I have one engineer who I used to work with, and he was like, "We went to Google I/O. Wow, he was so happy." And then he came back, and he was like, "Okay, I'm going to quit this company because I want to go to Silicon Valley." So he quit. He went to Silicon Valley. And then he was like, wow, like I'm in Fang, like life is good. And then he starts to realize that life isn't so good. Then he quit. And then he went to another Fang company, and he's like, wow, this is the best company ever. And then after a while, he's like, I think life back in Singapore was better. We are always like, we always have this kind of perspective that, as long as once I hit it, then life is going to be great. But then we miss out on things that we really should have valued, back then. So I don't have a very good response to this, but I think that at the end of the day, whether we stay where we are or kind of move to a country that we think would be good or a company or whatever, I think it's very good to take a step back and try to reflect whether, like, what do you want to do in the long term, and see what steps you can take in the short term so that you can hit your long term objectives. And of course, if you need to change your long term objectives along the way, given that new data comes along, then you should definitely do so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you inspired me to, and also reminded me of something. There's a difference between traveling overseas and working overseas, right? And generally, when we think about working, the opportunity to be able to relocate, get into a new lifestyle and work overseas, it's very easy to equate that to traveling overseas, right? Like an extended holiday. And I think from experience, it's often helpful to remind ourselves that is not exactly the case. It's going to take a lot of hard work. Right? It's going to take a lot of hard work to be able to settle down, to be able to build a life in a different country, establish your social network. And apart from that, the expectations are also going to be very different. So one of the myths, I would say, I'm not exactly sure if it's established as a myth. It was you have to it'll be helpful to view that opportunity as starting from ground up. Right, you got to work really hard to be able to reestablish yourself. Uh, and it's not that rosy picture where, oh, I have a chance to work in the Silicon Valley, so I'm basically gonna have a good time, have a great, be able to enjoy myself there, so on and so forth. But reality is that it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of planning, and there's gonna be how I say setbacks. There's gonna be setbacks. I would say, if the myth, once again, I say if the myth is that, if you're thinking that working overseas is like an extended holiday in the overseas, that's most probably not the case. The other part is, I'm just going to contradict myself, is working overseas will get you better pay. In Julia's case, yes, I think it works out for him. But in some cases that might not be the case. Right? I'll give you an example. When I was working in Sydney, the currency, if I remember correctly, Aussie dollar to the US, Aussie dollar was stronger. When I was working in Singapore and I moved to Sydney, Singapore dollar was stronger than the Aussie dollar. Then I moved to Sydney, and then Aussie dollar becomes stronger than Singapore dollar. I was very happy, and because I was employed over there, I'm accruing savings like the CPF here in Singapore, right? So I was very happy. Then after that, I moved to the US, and then at that time, Aussie dollar was still stronger than the US dollar. So my CPF equivalent in Aussie in Australia was growing. I was very happy, like yeah, very happy. Then all of a sudden it depreciate, and the US dollar becomes stronger. The Aussie dollar basically depreciate. So it's not very often the case where you will earn more as you moved. Because instead of just looking forward of what you'll be getting in the new opportunity, you gotta take into consideration what you're leaving behind, and you gotta manage that as well. So I'm not sure if that's a myth, but just something to share is that as you plan to move from one place to the other, you not only got to take care of relocation, but you also got to make sure you have a plan to maintain what you're leaving behind, your assets, whether that's financial assets or practical things, physical furniture, things like that. You got to make sure you have a plan for that too.
I think while you were talking, I was thinking about wait, I'm not sure how to phrase it. Okay, maybe let's come back to it later. Let me think about how to phrase the question first. But maybe to get to the audience sentiments, I think earlier on in this entire podcast, we did ask them to send in their concerns in terms of working overseas. So I'm just going to show that on the screen just to like give everyone the sentiment of, oh, okay, so top considerations of working overseas. So money seems to be a very big thing. Long-term opportunities. For some reason, cheap beer is there. Visa. So I guess the top three you can see over there: money followed by long-term opportunities, and then visa. Would this be something that you guys? Okay, I think money probably has been something that we have went through a lot of times. But how about long-term opportunities?
Long-term opportunities.
Would you consider that as maybe let's say like a 10-year career in the overseas?
Frankly speaking, I wasn't considering long-term opportunities. I think this ties down to life goals and objectives, right? And also where you are in life. When I was moving around, I was fairly young, so I was just going along with the ride. So I wasn't thinking about long-term opportunities. Although at the very end, very last year, when I was in San Francisco, this question did dawn upon me, like, do I see myself in the US for the long term? And that's when I start thinking about, do I stay? Do I go back? Do I go to other places? So I think it comes with experience, right? It comes with experience and also the objective of relocating. If there's a reason, there's a very reason, and and sometimes sometimes that's reality. Like you're in a bad place, and you felt that you're not getting the opportunity that you are looking to arrive at, then that could be a consideration. Where do I go to so that I'm able to, be exposed or receive better long-term opportunities? I think so. It's very situational, I feel.
can see there are some interesting points inside the word cloud as well. I think that there's one that in particular I don't think we talked about, safety. So
Oh.
actually kind of want to just ask if you all have anything that you all want to throw in terms of safety, like thinking about safety when you are looking at moving elsewhere for work.
Uh, Julius, you want to take this one?
Okay, I can take this one. This is going to be funny also. I have a story to tell actually, which I thought would be interesting to some, and also I might think that if I go to the Philippines, I'll never get out of immigration. Um, so so I came here, right? And then I was like, oh, I miss home. And then my dad is like, you're not going to come back. If you come back, you don't have a roof to stay, so stay in Singapore. Why the story, right? So I live near Chinatown in Manila. And in between Chinatown and outside of Chinatown, there's this very famous street, and I think some Filipinos who might be listening in, right? They know this street. It's called Recto. And Recto is so famous because that's where you get out of your house, you go to Recto, the street, and then once you reach your destination, right, you feel lighter because something is gone already, something is stolen. And in my case, I have no other choice but to actually cross that street because that's how I get to work. And that's how I go to school. And as you can imagine, I do so many things in Recto, either intentionally or unintentionally. So I had my bag slashed. I had my spectacles stolen from me. I don't know why they want a spectacle. I have two Bibles stolen from me. No idea why they want Bibles. I had a Nokia 3210, a phone, stolen from me. So basically, what they did was they surrounded me, and I think there was four of them. And I was like, okay, there's one of me, four of you. I cannot fight you, right? Here's my phone. And then they took off with the phone. I had my iPod almost stolen, and I was in the Philippines. There's this vehicle called the Jeep. Uh, where you kind of face each other, and then it's open, so like there's people outside, right? So imagine Jakarta, right? It's like Jakarta, like it's like like the traffic is really bad. And in the Philippines, when you ride a public transportation, especially a jeepney, don't show anything at all. So apparently there's this one person who has earrings. I mean, like people wear earrings, right? So there's a jam. Somebody comes in, pull the earrings off the ear, and run away. Oh my god! Like so, the person is bleeding. Like no choice. Then I see all these. I had the side mirror of our car stolen before my eyes. I was almost kidnapped. I'm still alive, so I guess I was almost so I went to the barber shop in front of my house. I went to cut my hair. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. Went to cut my hair. We know the guy, so like not a problem, right? I went to cut my hair. I was crossing back, and some guy grabbed my hand. And for some crazy reason, I was able to shake his hand off because otherwise I would have been dragged all along already, and probably nobody would know where I am. So yeah, I mean, like Singapore, if any of these things happen, they will be caned. They will be, I don't know, like it's not going to happen, I think. So yeah, I think I mean, like Philippines, Singapore, I guess I probably will have a better chance of living here.
Safety. That's a very interesting perspective. I feel, yeah. I don't have all the adventures that Julius have just shared. I'm not sure if I'm lucky or maybe I'm just unnoticeable. Uh, but one thing that comes to mind about safety, it depends on the. I feel it depends on the job. And what I mean is that I was speaking to a friend. She used to be a reporter, and then she had an opportunity to go to a war zone to cover a story for a few months. And that's when we really talk about safety. We're saying that is it really worth for you to go over there and get the story covered? Yeah, what actually drives you to to kind of pursue that opportunity, and that's when we really talk about safety. I think then I have another friend who volunteered in the UN. Basically, when volunteering, he's actually an employee, and he was in charge of driving the truck that carries medical equipment, to all those set up temporary clinic tents, right, for the victims of war, and I think those kind of opportunities, you kind of maybe you gotta seriously think about safety, I guess. But I feel that if you're looking at jobs which are fairly, you're going to be working in a company, you gotta working in an enclosed area, regardless of where you go, as long as you're not in sketchy places. Yeah, you could think about safety in terms of where you lived, but there's every place will always have areas where there's a little bit more dodgy, and you stay clear of those areas, you should be fine, right? So I think that's my response. If you ask me, would safety be a big consideration? I think it comes with the job and the nature of the work and where you're heading to, obviously.
So I think moving away from the response from audience, I want to go back to one of the earlier questions we had earlier. And maybe to bridge off from Bok's earlier response on the sense of the opportunities of money, as you move from place to place, the depreciation of let's say the currency, or let's say the difference in the currency, usually that might be what it takes, like in terms of causing whether your what's that, financial ability to be better in a different country or in a current country. But I wanted to use that to actually ask, does that overseas experience actually help you increase your value as a software engineer? And I think it's also very interesting. Someone from audience also asked, Vanessa asked on this, in terms of this overseas experience, does it increase your value such that, as you move on to a different job, you might be able to get command let's say a higher pay what's that, as a result of that? And I think in her case, she's also asking about in terms of your career.
Let me think. There's different perspective to this question. One is the optics, right? From having overseas experience and having relevant overseas experience, having it on your portfolio, I think that helps. And the keyword here is relevant, right? And also relevant industry, right? Because when you think about career development, it's all about building up your career in a particular area, so they establish yourself as a domain expert. If that's the way you want to do it, but I think relevancy is definitely more valued than looking at where you have worked. Now, it also depends on the JD, right? Like, let's say, for example, if you are going to a global company and you have experience working in a country where the company might expand or already have a presence there, then you're adding value because your experience would definitely be able to help further down the road, or maybe as part of the JD, or there's expectation of the JD, that could really help. So I would say it really depends on how relevant your experience is. And you got to think about from the aspect of whether you're adding value to that company, right? Whether your overseas experience will add value to the company. The position that you don't want to be in is that you kind of upsells yourself so high, and then set the expectation so high, and then you come in and then you're not able to deliver. Right, then that's the other thing, right? So then the optics and the substance does not match, right? Because optics-wise is you look at the resume like, wow, this candidate have overseas experience, but then in reality, when it's being put to the test, it's not able to deliver. So that's one thing. The other thing I think some companies look at is how dynamic this person is. Right, if you have overseas experience and you basically have a stellar resume in terms of like what role you have taken on in that particular countries and so forth. Uh, it might be a signal that this candidate is a very dynamic candidate, right? Very adaptable. So that helps. As someone who is looking to hire, I think we are looking at adaptability, flexibility. Able to kind of navigate ambiguity. So having those experiences might be an indication that this candidate is very dynamic in that sense. So I say that helps, but it all comes down to setting the right expectation, I feel. So if you're having those being called on your resume, you just make sure that that really there's really substance to back it up. So at least the employer and the employee, the expectation are aligned in a sense, and that's when overseas experience really helped, to really help to beef up your resume. You want to add anything else, Julius?
I think nothing much. I totally agree with what Box says. I'm not sure if anything I add will have any value, but maybe just briefly, right? I think also from a perspective of hiring manager and perhaps a business owner, there are slight advantage and disadvantage, probably not much of a disadvantage, I guess, but a slight advantage for people who have overseas experience in countries, as Box mentioned, that looks at optics and um, overseas experience is one of those things that makes them stand out. So in countries that are usually, how shall I say, more receptive to foreign, how shall I say, goods and like stuff, you can quickly throw out some names, right? Like countries generally that have less formidable self-esteem. They are usually the ones who look at overseas entities with better view. So then you can command better salary perhaps. But usually for software engineers, because you have to go through interview process, right? It doesn't really matter whether you're from such and such a country trying to invert a binary tree. It's if you fail, you fail. The kind of thing. Um, and the other thing to note is that once you go beyond the IC route, once you start just speaking from the software engineer perspective, right? Because like if we start talking about marketing, sales, and country managers, then it's a different ballgame. But specifically for the software engineer career path, once you go to the director level and above, director, VP, CTO, those levels, you will run into a situation whereby the interview process is no longer about your skills, but rather the confidence that you can actually communicate to the other person. It's already the transfer of confidence, which also means that like if you're not happy with whoever is above you, it's probably because of the confidence that was conveyed and not really the skills. Just being fully upfront that that's the case. So it's probably something to think about, whether overseas or here. That's just the way things work.
Yeah, I think you brought a very good point. I just want to supplement my answer and just having more focus on software engineers. I think the main thing for Swiss, in the sense, is that there's always this transition phase from being a skilled Swiss to a value creation software engineer. And I feel every time when the industry is looking at hiring in terms of software engineer, it's always, if you could position yourself as the leader, which means that I understand the industry, I understand the business cases, I understand the use cases, and I have experience in the right methodology to be able to do this efficiently and add value to the company, then you're falling into the value creation position as a software engineer. And if your overseas experience help you to be able to arrive and build your own branding and the skill sets to come across as a value creation engineer. I think that's when having overseas experience can really help. Um, but if you're going around and acquiring, new programming languages, new methodologies, so on and so forth, and you come across different industries, then I think from a hiring standpoint is that does this overseas experience will really help this person to understand the problems and the challenges of our users in this particular industry, in this particular vertical. So I think in that sense, then it's not much of a help, I feel, and it's personally my point of view. But I thought I'll just share that. Yeah.
I'd like to. So I think those are really excellent answers, and I want to use the opportunity to go from this to our final question. I know a lot has been said in terms on the opinion on whether this experience is valuable, and I think in certain parts we have also or you guys have also shared the experience that it's not necessary an experience that it's like, let's say, it's something that's uh, additionally special as compared, let's say, a SWE without overseas experience, but it's something good to have. So from your perspectives, like, as sort of a closing note, would you encourage other people, despite what has been discussed today, to take this leap towards working overseas?
Wow, this one, the responsibility of making sure we don't give out wrong advice.
Oh no.
Is, would you encourage others to take this leap to relocate and work elsewhere? I would
Perhaps
say,
maybe. Go ahead.
well, I'll say if the opportunity is there, and then the risks are well calculated. There's definitely no harm in trying. Right? There's definitely no harm in trying. Uh, it would definitely it would broaden perspective, and you gain new experience for sure. Like, even at the end of the day, it doesn't work out, right? You still learn from the experience, and you get a better understanding of why it didn't work out, and you're able to appreciate the things that you hold on dearly more, I feel. The other thing is, as we nowadays, in our roles and we work with companies, we always need to be able to. It's always a global setting, especially in the field of technology. It's always a global setting, right? So I think the experience would help us to adopt a more global perspective. Nonetheless, I'm talking about the tech industry. So from that aspect, and if someone is comfortable with the risk, really likes the opportunity, I would say that go for it, give it a shot, and see what happens after that. Would love to hear what Julius has got to say, though.
Well, for someone who left his country and stayed outside, right? I think there's a benefit to go outside, of course. And also, I think it will surely benefit if you go back and also share the knowledge, right? I think that
Yeah, that's a good point.
one thing that I felt quite strongly is that after I've been here for a while, right, is I really want to give back to the Philippines. So whenever there's a Google developer group in the Philippines looking for someone to speak about stuff, well, and usually for this kind of community organizations, right? They're actually like not paid by Google Earth. If they're doing it out of their goodwill, they're really volunteers, and many of them, right? They actually don't pay me. So actually, most of them don't pay. So and that's totally fine. So I will pay for my airfare, my hotel, everything, and I'll go back and I'll share, because I think that it's some way to give back to the country that sort of like I kind of live for greater years in my life. So I think it's always good to give back, even if you decide not to go back to your home country eventually. Um, uh, like I think life would be better if we learn together. So hopefully that could be something to think about. Of course, if you can go back to your home country and kind of build it, that would be far more noble. So don't be like me, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Julius. I think I'll just add something more. Is um, always think about a fallback plan. Learning from experience. What I miss out in doing, and should have be more cognizant about this. Is think about timeline when you relocate. Do you relocate for a year? Do you relocate for 2 years? And then if it works out, what you want to do. If it doesn't work out, what's the fallback plan is going to look like. Um, that's kind of important because every time when you relocate, you're taking some risks and you're putting yourself in a certain situation for some time until things settle down. You get a good grasp of like where your direction is, where your compass is heading. So I would say think about the sandbox. Think about how much time you give to yourself to try out this opportunity, and what happens if it materialize. You really like it, or what happens if it doesn't. What's your fallback plan is going to look like? Yeah.
That's really good advice. Thanks for sharing. I think this has been a really good sharing session. We've heard different experiences, different stories, great advice at the end. So I think before we close off, just to thank Bok for joining us today, for sharing all your various experiences and stories with all of us.
Oh man, thanks for
Mm.
thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this session. And yeah. Hopefully I've value to contribute to this discussion. And yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Definitely. I think we learned a lot. In fact, for myself, I think I learned a lot just by hearing from your experiences, and also I think a lot of interesting stories from Julius earlier on as well. Yeah. Mm. Okay, so we're gonna be moving to our closing for our event today. So, okay, hold on. Okay. Uh, yep, Julius. So, do you introduce about the events that are going to be coming soon?
Yeah, it will be my pleasure. So, we will have Nandini in 2 weeks' time, and she'll be talking about her experience moving from a junior software engineer all the way to a director level. And this spans about 20 years of experience. So we will get to know a little bit about the challenges that she has run into along the way, and the mistakes that she has run into, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes, and also certain career shortcuts, if I may. So I think it would be beneficial to hear from her. I think she's one of those engineers who have a very, very wide scope in terms of her understanding, not just on the engineering vertical, but also on the product side and the business side. So it's something that I hope we'll see you at, and that's in 2 weeks' time. And then we have Bei. Bei is also a very, very interesting speaker. She is actually Brazilian, despite the name. She's a Chinese Brazilian. And her path is very different in the sense that she started off as a software engineer, became a staff engineer, and over the 20 years of her career, she actually stayed as a software engineer. So now what she does is she works on various products on Facebook for Android TV, for LG, for Samsung. And it would be very interesting to also hear from her perspective why she stayed as an IC individual contributor, and also all the learning she has along the way working on mobile devices, working on TV devices, web, and kind of see what lessons we can harness from 20 years of experience as well. So we hope you see you in these two events.
Oh, okay. So, yep, we've reached the end of our event today. And make sure, I think, both for Big O as well as for Google Developer Space, do follow our socials, subscribe to our YouTube channel, especially if you're watching from YouTube. I think we can see quite a number of you both from I think Big O side as well as from Google Developer Space. So if you have not subscribed yet, like, share, subscribe, all those regular YouTubers, what they say. And yeah, hope you guys have a great evening. We had a great session. Thanks again to Bob, as well as the rest of our hosts. So yeah, hope to see you guys next time. Bye, guys.